GameStop employees of Reddit, what are some of your horror stories? 4 come to mind. A woman comes in to trade in an Xbox 360 in a box. I open the box and the smell hits me. Rat droppings, grime, cockroaches and all have spent time in this thing. Luckily my manager noticed and we were able to decline the trade. Spent 5 minutes disinfecting the counter before I helped the next customer. One time I was trading in a PS4 I think. We were chatting while I was wiping his hard drive and commenting on all his achievements. Sometime during this conversation he got nostalgic and changed his mind, but not before I had already deleted all his data. Felt terrible. One homeless looking guy comes in during one of the few times I'm alone in the store. He was dragging around a trash bag, and I was doing my best to keep him in eyesight as he was all kinds of sketchy. He managed to stuff an Xbox 360 in the bag and walk out, but I ran out and asked him to give it back, which he did, saying please don't call the cops. I did. The last one kinda shook me. This woman comes in with a gaggle of kids, maybe 4. They were all terrors, running around to different parts of the store, yelling, grabbing things and rearranging them, seemingly causing distractions, while this woman tried on 3 separate occasions to get behind the counter. They end up buying something, but then I notice under this big box the oldest kid has picked up. He'd stuffed his hands full of the little DS games that were on the gobble section on the counter. There was more here, but I'd lost some of the details, but it really gave me the impression this was all coordinated by their mother. It's one thing to see adults steal, to see kids who are encouraged to do so, just terribly sad. I was an assistant manager when one of the Madden games came out. 04, maybe. We were doing a big midnight opening for it and everybody was having a great time waiting for the game, which we were picking up from another store about 30 miles away. Around 11 o'clock, after people had been waiting for 2 hours after the mall closed, I got a phone call. The game wasn't coming. I almost broke down, sitting behind the register, dreading the thought of telling everybody that they just wasted their time. To make matters worse, another store within walking distance of us got their games. I just wanted to die that night. I'm so grateful that our customers took it well and didn't get too angry. Had a couple come in to return a Sesame Street video game and a controller. They had a receipt from over a year ago. The game was scratched to hell and the controller was full of dried soda. They said it didn't work anymore. Shocker. And were furious when I wouldn't give them their money back. Like standing there screaming at me. I was the manager, so I had no one else there to back me up. It was crazy. Their kid was bawling. The lady was swearing like a syphilitic sailor and the husband couldn't finish a sentence. Pretty sure they were both super high too. So that was fun. When the PS2 came out I was assistant manager and my manager would sell them out of the back room at a markup. Such a snake. I took the demos box home with a copy of Halo before the system launched one night and had a 4-player all-night party. One of our other local stores had someone dig through the outside wall and steal everything out of their back room. Also when you get done alphabetizing the Wii games and notice your hands are covered in mystery sticky stuff from all of the filthy children handling the cases. That was pretty gross. One time a woman screamed at me because her kid was tearing open a toy before paying for it and I kindly told him to wait a little bit. She seemed on the fence on whether she wanted to buy the toy or not for her kid. So you know I wasn't glad that her kid was already ripping it open. She then proceeded to scream at me for being really awful with kids, a horrible person, bad at my job, etc. Also she wanted to complain to the manager if I ever talked to her kid like that again. She then angrily paid and walked out of the store. Also people tinkering / modding their console and then trying to return it because it doesn't work anymore and angrily insisting on having it bought that way in GameStop. Worked part-time at GameStop while I was in college. The best story I love to tell is a mom and son story. 40-ish mom and 10-ish boy come into the store in a large strip mall with lots of stores, don't even look at merchandise, come up to the counter and ask to let the kid use the bathroom. clarified she's not there to buy anything but has spent thousands of dollars in our store previously. We politely tell her we can't let customers use our bathroom because it's in the back of the store with lots of high-priced merchandise. That's the policy. We have cameras and corporate reviews the footage. Another story I have where I was wrongfully terminated substantiates that one. Additionally, what we don't tell her is that all the used game consoles that people sell back to us were stored in the bathroom. There was 1 month prior to Christmas I had to do some impressive yoga to get to the toilet. I'm sure those consoles were a hazmat. But I digress. But, not to be unsympathetic to this kid's plight, we tell the mom that the pizza place next door lets people use their bathroom if they buy something, and the cheapest thing is a $1 soda/bottle of water. She starts flipping out on us and spewing expletives, telling us she's paid our salaries 10 times over and that we are going to hell, yada yada yada. Then, no joke, tells her son to just go. Kid actually unzips and pees all over the carpet in front of my register. Then they left. I've never been so grossed out and dumbfounded. Had to close up for the day and half the next day while GameStop paid to have our carpets sanitized. Resulted in a loss of pay for the weekend. Wonder what happened to that kid. He's gotta be in his 20s by now. TLDR. Mom let her fully potty trained son urinate on the carpet in front of the registers when we didn't allow him to use the employee bathroom in our store when there was a perfectly good bathroom for him to use in the pizza restaurant next door. Former employee. 2 wonderful stories. 1. Older lady brings in a bag. She looks like an addict and she wants to sell her weed. I put my hand in the bag and it's soaking wet. Cat piss. She was furious I wouldn't take it. From that day forward, made every customer take all trades out of bags themselves too. My first store was long, and I had a kid and mom in back. Mom wasn't paying attention at all. 8-year-old walking around. Gets really quiet. Then mom rushes the kid out of the store. Go back there, and he took a sheet on the floor. Watch the tape. Mom finds him squatting. Lets him finish, Ethan takes him out. A gentleman comes in to buy one of our old 360 bundles, used the old system that required the HD. He brings it back a few days later and complains that it doesn't work. We start on normal troubleshooting methods in store. We couldn't figure anything out. So I do a swap, take his old system in as defective, then sell him a replacement bundle. I go through and try to wipe the system so we can ship it back to the warehouse. Cockroaches start crawling out of the system instead. I freak out. Throw the system in one of our giant shopping bags. Throw that in a box. Tape it shut and throw that in another bag. My manager tells me to just shrink it out, meaning we take the loss and destroy it in the bag. I take it out to the parking lot and have to throw it around to destroy it. These cockroaches freaking scatter like marbles on a floor. I'm dancing around the parking lot on my tiptoes to avoid the flood. It was awful. Second story, one of my regulars was a skunk farmer. I will say no more. Eater, okay, skunk farmer. I worked at a store that bordered to states. In state A, where the store was located, we were in a nicer area. We were extremely close to state B's rural community. State B had its own store an hour away from ours, but we were only 15 minutes from the state line. It was easier for state B residents to come to us rather than go to their own store. Mr. Skunk Farmer raised skunks. I don't know why or how, but every time I'd see him, about twice a month, he'd show me some photos of the babies, or of their new pens, or of whatever shenanigans he was trying out on the farm. I remember he wore overalls that he had his wife embroider a skunk onto the front pocket or something. I worked at GameStop for 5 years. We all have seen some strange things, I promise you that. Not an employee, but I was waiting in line to buy a game, and a guy came in with his 8-Y/O child I assumed was his son, and pointed the kid to the Nintendo section as he went over to PlayStation. I was daydreaming, off in my own world, and it took me a second to realize a moment later that I was hearing water splashing. I turned around to see the kid projectile vomiting all over the floor and the Nintendo games. the employee at the counter, the lady in front of me, and I all just watch this child empty his guts onto the floor before the father comes up to the son. "You okay, bud?" "Yeah. Alright, let's get out of here." And without a word or even looking at anyone else, the two leave the store. Once gone, the three of us exchange wild looks, and the employee tells us it's his first day running the store on his own, and he doesn't have any cleaning supplies or know what to do. Poor guy. Parents, please don't let your kids throw up in GameStop. Worked at GS a long time ago, but I'll never forget this one. One night a guy brought in a really dusty and dirty GameCube wanting cash, of course. I asked him if it worked, and he said he didn't know because he hadn't played it in a long time. I told him that we have to check every console, and when I turned it on and opened the lip, about 100 roaches came running out all over the counter. I worked in a store where theft was a very common occurrence, but this one dude, he nabbed one of the cheap controllers off the wall from the back of the store, puts it in his backpack, then comes over to the counter. He reaches across the counter, opens a drawer and steals a brand new game out of the drawer, takes it away from the register, opens it, waits in line, trades the game in for $25. Then he asks me to look for something in one of the bottom drawers, and he steals back the game he just traded in a second time. After that he immediately left the store before I could notice he was gone. I gotta give him credit, he had some sleg balls. So many other sketchy things too, but this one I just had to laugh at. I got two stories. Quick one is a guy who would come in all the time to ask about / buy obscure Vita dating sims and asking inappropriate questions like if the next Dragon Age, at this time World of Bean Inquisition, was going to finally have 6 scenes in it. Next one is New Year's Day. Miserable, I'm working already. It's super early and first customer of the day, of the whole year, is this like 7-foot tall guy who comes in asking for ad cables for a PS4 cause the one he just bought didn't have one. We immediately tell him the PS4 only uses HDMI, and so it wouldn't have AV cables, even confirming with him, "You mean those red, yellow, and white cables?" He starts getting mad and asks again for the cables, which we again tell him don't exist. Maybe there's an adapter or something, but I've never seen one, and we don't have them here regardless. Maybe check Best Buy. Guy immediately starts screaming, "You racist motherfuckers, get me this cable. I'm homeless. I just bought this thing for my grandkids. You're all racist white devil duckers." Thankfully I froze in fear and confusion, and my boss took over and just scooted the guy out the door. Hell of a way to start the year. I used to be the ASIN of a GameStop, but nothing really out of the ordinary happened there. Just a lot of lingerers. When I was the manager of a local game store though, there was definitely a lot of wild stories. The one that sticks out the most is this old dude we called Psycho Sexy, who would come in every Monday morning, try to sell me, or whoever was working, bootleg pronoun DVDs. He would tell us they were good for busting fat ass nuts too, and that he'd sell them to us super cheap. Every Monday he'd come in, open up his duffel bag of bootleg pronoun, get refused, then leave, and come back the following Monday. This went on for almost 3 years. I was hired to help open a new store. A store where the manager was male and everyone he hired? Female. He was definitely trying to cultivate a hot GameStop kind of situation. Word got around, and we had people coming in to visit ours when they had other stores much closer to where they lived. They didn't really buy anything, they kind of just lurked around for hours at a time, chatting the staff up. There were days when they'd wait for us to close up. That was kind of scary. I was eventually let go for not being friendly enough, which was apparently about 3 months before the manager had a total screaming meltdown during store hours, declared himself High Archangel, threw some shit at a customer, and was later picked up by an ambulance. So I guess my horror story is the whole damn job. My first job was at GameStop, early 2000s. I stayed for about 4 years from when I was 17 to 21, started as a part-timer and ended up as a shift supervisor. Then boyfriend, later husband, now ex-husband, was our store manager for a while. The point is, I have seen some shit. My favorite one. It is a weekday afternoon, so we are slow and short-staffed. It's just the two of us, my boyfriend and I, and maybe a customer or two. Someone is playing the Guitar Hero demo. Someone is browsing the wall. The door jingles, and in walks a guy with a huge backpack. I give the customary greeting, "Hey, welcome in. Let us know if you need anything," and he doesn't acknowledge or respond. I shrug to my boyfriend, go back to cleaning discs or stripping cases, or whatever. The guy looks around for a few minutes and we think nothing of it. Finally he comes up to my boyfriend and gestures for the stack of post-its he's using to label games we're putting in the disc buffing machine. Boyfriend obliges, guy says nothing, just writes on the post-it. He puts it on the counter in full view of both of us, and in all capital letters, is the following message: "I have gun. Give money?" Boyfriend and I turn sheet white, and realize we are being robbed, and this guy has a gun in his giant backpack. We are teenagers with no manager, and no silent alarm under the desk, and we are ducking terrified. The guy's already putting down the backpack and unzipping it. The other customers are totally unaware and off doing their own thing, and we are going to get murdered in a GameStop at 1 PM on a Tuesday over the $100 we have in our tiny ass till in the safe neither of us have the combo for. He reaches in the backpack and withdraws a light gun for a Sega Dreamcast. Turns out this guy is deaf and wants to sell us a ducking light gun. TL. Doctor, a deaf guy came in to sell us a toy gun, and decided the best way to communicate that was to write on a post-it that he had a gun and wanted money. The guy who comes in with obviously stolen stuff, but can't be called out on it, so he just keeps it up. I've worked at one since October of last year and still do as a gap. I've also worked for most of the early/midnight releases, so I have a few stories. Early release of RDR2, I was manning the door only letting in 10 people at a time. We have a small store. The customers had ticket numbers they picked up earlier, and they were already in order. If you didn't have a ticket number, you had to go to the back of the line. One huge buff dude came and didn't have a ticket number, but apparently really wanted this game. So he tackled me against the door and tried to barge in, and I foolishly blocked him, pissing off this large man to defend my minimum wage job. He eventually went to the back and did the respect nod when he eventually walked out with a game. Some guy had a Diablo edition Switch that he pre-ordered, and he didn't know how taxes worked. A normal Switch is $320 with taxes, and he was wondering why he was being charged extra. My manager eventually took over, showing him on a calculator how much it was. He left, then came back later saying he didn't have a receipt. I put the receipt in the bag, like I always do. My manager saw me put it in the bag. A random lady saw me put it in the bag, but it wasn't, and now he was threatening to call corporate. My manager goes to review the camera footage, while I pretend to look through the trash for his receipt, and listen to him complain. My manager comes out and tells him the receipt was in his wallet. This one doesn't apply to me, but my coworkers. We have 2 women working in the store, and they have to put up with the thirstiest, creepiest, most trashy people I've met. I've seen people hit on my coworkers frequently, making my coworkers visually uncomfortable. We've had stalkers that would come in just to stare at my coworkers. Some people would ask for them specifically, just so they have a chance to talk to them. There are those that think girls don't know anything about games and insult them and ask for me or one of my male coworkers. We usually just make the sale and try to get them out as soon as possible. It's a very unfortunate thing to say that the cops are called semi-regularly because of people getting aggressive or handsy towards my female coworkers. My manager, being a woman herself, would like more hours given to the store so people don't have to work by themselves because it is legitimately dangerous, but corporate says no. I once had a lady and her teenage son come in to trade in several DVDs and games they had just stolen from the Walmart behind the strip mall where our store was. Walmart employee calls me to ask if they are in my store and says the cops are on the way, so stall or do what you can to keep them there. I said sure. I told them the cash versus store credit value of their items without mentioning that I can't even take them because they are still wrapped in the cellophane. I walk them around the store and talk about which games are the best value for the money, etc. The cops show up and ask them to step outside, and I just smile and go back behind the counter. They followed the police out, and one officer comes back a minute later to get the merchandise. Last I heard about it, not a horror story but definitely weird. Then there was this wealthy couple who had 3 kids and each kid had a Wii, a PS3, and an Xbox 360. They would pre-order every major game that came out for each system, always the deluxe edition. They spent a ton of money in our store. And they were crazy. So abusive to every employee. They cussed at us and called us stupid. They would ask for things they knew they couldn't have and then throw a fit. They would scour their receipts for anything that could be a mistake and make you explain it to them over and over. I went to work at a different company and they came into my store there and got in line for my favorite cashier. I immediately called a manager over when it was their turn to check out, explained how I knew them, and that there was a 99% chance they would make the cashier cry. He went over, and just as he got there they were beginning to raise their voices about some supposed mistake. Luckily that manager is super good at handling people, and got them out without letting them get a word in edgewise. I practically had PTSD from dealing with them. I think they got off on abusing people together. They would sometimes be laughing as they did it. If they found legitimate mistake in anything, their faces would just light up. Truly evil people.